The Boss Hole Chronicles are brought to you by Real Good Ventures, a talent optimization firm helping organizations diagnose their most critical people and execution issues with world-class analytics. Make sure to check out all the resources in the show notes and be sure to follow us and share your feedback. Enjoy today's episode. Welcome back to part 2 of our conversation with Ryan Hawk.
So you said you did homework for life for 120 times. Help us understand what that is.
So I had a guest named Matthew Dix. He wrote a book called Storyworthy, and he also has given a few TED Talks. And it's one of the episodes that has impacted me the most. A lot of us don't think we're good storytellers. And really, it's the fact that we're just not doing a good job at collecting our own stories. So homework for life is the simple act of collecting your own stories at the end of each day or at the end of however many days that you'd like to. I set a goal to do it 100 times last year. I think Matthew still does it. He's going to run a leadership circle for me. So we've been talking a lot recently, but he does it every day. But simply put a process in place to collect the stories of the day. And if you do that, it has a number of benefits. One of them is you're certainly gonna have a lot of stories that aren't useful, that you won't use in any part of your life. You won't use for a keynote. You won't use for your team meeting. You won't use. But if you create the consistent habit of documenting the stories of the day, you will find some nuggets within them through your reflection process that you will be able to use at times that will be helpful in your life. The other part about that's really cool about homework for life, it actually has this odd ability to slow down time. If you talk to any parent, all of them, literally all of them, including me, will say, God, it just goes by so fast. My child was 2 and now they're 8. What happened? Well, homework for life actually, there's science backed this up. Matthew and I talk about it. I think it's episode 430, but we talk about the fact that documenting these stories helps you in a way relive them so they don't just go by in a blur. You don't forget them. You relive them. And when you continually relive so many of these stories, it actually slows the time down because wow, a lot has happened. It hasn't just flown by, bum, 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 like all of those things have happened. So it's had a number. I still do it. It's a big part of my reflective process of documenting the days. Not only do I try to document the stories of the day, I document a key learning from that moment. So this oftentimes happens after I record a podcast. I'm really excited. I document the key learnings from that particular person, as well as then maybe a family story of the day, what happened at soccer practice tonight with my daughter Charlie, whatever the case may be. And then those stack up, and then you reflect on all of your homework for life entries. And I just keep mine in a Google Sheet. You can keep it whatever is easiest for you, because I can also access that on my phone, which I like to sometimes write on my phone. And that way, I just have so many of these stories listed out that I probably would have forgotten, at least most of them, if I hadn't documented them. So I'm grateful that I have him in my life, Matthew Dixon. I'm grateful for the fact of that idea, and it's something I encourage anybody can do it. I mean, just document the stories of the day, document key learnings, whatever it may be. Set up, if you set goals or if you just set regular processes in place, that I think that's a way to really implement it.
It kind of blows my write one sentence every day out of the water. I have one of those.
Whatever. I mean, that could be part of it too, for sure.
Yeah, but I love this idea, and as a parent of older kids, John, you are too. Anything we can do to stay in the moment and enjoy that moment and slow it down is powerful. Okay, so a couple more quick things. You talk about success versus excellence, and I just want to share a quote. And the quote actually in your book, Pursuit of Excellence, comes from Brooke Cups, who's a colleague, a coach, a friend of yours. He says success is based on a comparison with others, while excellence is measured against your own potential. Can you unpack that for a second for us?
Yeah, I mean, we just live in a world of comparison. If you choose to have any type of social media, if you choose to really do anything, there's just a series of comparison. It's always been this way, but it's magnified even more now because it's right at our fingertips at all times, right? The Instagram is a highlight reel of your life. I know it is for me. It is for most people. You don't post the bad things. You only post the great things. And so you end up just comparing yourself, and you feel really bad. You also start comparing yourself to what you think society deems as being important, as opposed to doing the work on yourself to what's important to you, to maximizing your own capability. So Brooke came up with this kind of success versus excellence, and I really, he's become a very close mentor and friend, and someone I look up to just in the way he lives his life. Now, if you also measure his results, which is not a big part of how he measures himself at all, it's not a part, in fact, at all of how he measures the impact he's having on people's lives. Brooke was the Ohio High School Division I Basketball Coach of the Year last year, an award he has now in his office. They won this first ever state championship at Centerville High School with Brooke as the coach, and his son as the sophomore starting point guard. This is Division I, the biggest schools in Ohio.
Right.
He turned a football school into a basketball school. And so all of these things out of really just having his own inner scorecard, his own belief system of, I am going to try to be tough, passionate, unified, and thankful. And I want all my players to embody the values of being tough, passionate, unified, and thankful. And to me, that is inspiring to see someone able to not only do that for themselves, but to impart all of that on all of his kids that he coaches and teaches. He also teaches a leadership class, which I've spoken at a few times every year for the past 4 or 5 years. And I'm amazed at those kids. When I go in there, it makes me feel so good for the future to see how advanced they are, how curious they are, how thoughtful they are when they approach things. So to me, this is an aspirational thing for me. I am nowhere close to being as self-actualized as Brooke is, as to really truly living out this success versus excellence. Like, I'm good at it some of the time, and I'm trying to be good at it all of the time. But it's a battle. I mean, it's hard. It is hard to not compare yourself to those things, to not read the work of Adam Grant and then read my book and say, man, it's just not even close. It's just not even close to as good. But I still do it. I try not to, but I do. And I think that's something that I think all of us would probably be better suited if we got better at.
Yeah. I think the key takeaway that I just heard in there was, create your own scorecard.
Yeah.
Do the work to figure out, and it's been a message you shared earlier too. Know what your values are, determine those, and figure out how you're going to live those out so that they could become more of that scorecard. I think too about managers and supervisors that, are optimizing or trying to optimize others. So maybe they're leading other leaders, but they have this particular vantage point of how it should look and what it should be like, and they should act this way to be successful. And that doesn't honor the individual leadership style. It doesn't provide for the innovation and the creativity and the diversity that we need in leadership. So, casting mini-me's or, trying to enforce some kind of leadership structure in our organization doesn't work either. What you're talking about is letting people learn from the journey and learn by way of education and experience to become, more in line with their values. Go ahead, John.
Well, not only just their values, but let them stand on their own square. And what does that look like? I mean, in our work, our listeners already know, Ryan, in our work on predictive analytics, 17 different reference profiles. We talk about 17 different types of leadership characteristics, and helping people understand what that is and embrace that, and not feel, because all too often there are others that are trying to shape that by comparison, and to say, if you want to be successful, that's what you have to do. This is what you have to pick up. And I love your idea of, and the suggestion, and I hope people are listening to this, read, listen, learn from all these different types of approaches and methodologies and leaders. And it's not about mimicking, it's about embracing and understand, how do I stand on my own square and become an effective human for the people around me? And in the context of business, how can I lead more effectively? And again, we say boss holes beget boss holes. I mean, the great way to stay out of the boss hole zone is to reflect on perhaps some of the bad managers you've had in the past and start to think about, how can I do that better? Because there is always a way to do it better. We spent the better part of a century curating really bad management practices, and there's a much better world out there for them. And I think your your books, your work is designed to help them understand that.
Yeah, it started. I got my first real job was after I got done playing football professionally, and I got hired by this legendary leader named Rex Caswell. I just had dinner with him a few weeks ago, so I'm so glad he's still a big part of my life. But Rex hired me because he's a family friend. Nepotism was pretty much how I got my first job, and it's true. And I got in there, and I honestly had no idea what you were supposed to do.
Right.
And he goes, "Hey, I'm gonna help you out a little bit here. Here are the top 10 performing sales reps. Let's sit together and write a list of questions, and I think you should interview all of them." Oh, okay, that sounds like a good idea. And I'll even help you with the interview process. Like I will help you write the questions so that you could go and actually sit with each of them, spend an hour and a half, ask them questions, write down everything they say, and then you could try to figure out how you could take some of what they're doing and implement it into how you could approach this job. But you're not going to become somebody else,
right.
But you're going to take bits and pieces from each of them. And so that exercise, and I don't know, I think he regularly had people do this, but that exercise really was transformative because I learned little things from multiple people. I actually became best friends. Two of those people who I interviewed ended up in my wedding one day.
Oh, wow.
So that's how cool friendship happened as a result of kind of working and learning from other
Right.
people.
Right.
And it was a reminder of, what a cool way to learn. Why don't we just interview people? Why don't we ask them their story? Why don't we try to uncover? We're not going to take everything from everybody, but we can probably take some things from just about everybody. And if you do that, I like your chances. That's what I tell you. What listening to podcasts to me is all about. I listen to tons and tons of podcasts, and it's really about trying to pick up some things here and there and be entertained. I like to be entertained, but
Sure.
pick up some things here and there to then try to implement into what I'm doing, and that I find to be just an exciting element of living, really.
Yeah. And we will be right back.
With employee disengagement at its highest level in 9 years, your company can't afford to miss the mark when it comes to optimizing your hiring, management, and team performance practices. At its lowest level, employee turnover costs you $11,000 per person. And those are dollars you can easily save with the right set of people analytics. Real Good Ventures is a talent optimization consultancy specializing in world-class analytics specific to your people and the critical role they play within your organization. Gain confidence in your hiring practices, keep the boss holes from driving your talent away, design your teams for flawless execution, and create a culture that offers meaning and fulfillment. Real Good Ventures has a family of validated diagnostic tools specific to the human aspect of business, because we know that all business issues are people issues. Visit us today at www.realgoodventures.com and bring meaning and fulfillment back into your workplace.
Okay, let's get back to the program.
Well, and I think that's kind of a segue into the last thing I wanted to have you share with us a little bit about. In Pursuit of Excellence, you define pursuit as a chase or a quest for something, but you also talk about how you took your competitive nature and the things you had learned to make you successful, for example, in football, and you decided to apply them to the sales process and to, finding success there, which you did. But in the midst of that, you found purpose. So this is where you kind of highlight passion versus purpose. And I think there's wisdom in there that our listeners should hear about.
Well, I don't know anybody who says when they're a kid or even when they graduate college, you know what I really want to do? I want to get a job at a company sitting in a cubicle making 60 cold calls a day selling this information-based tools to attorneys.
Right.
That's what I'm passionate about. Nobody is passionate about that. But what I think happened through the course of it, I was passionate about learning. I was passionate about helping other people. I was passionate about being a part of a team. I was passionate about helping a company grow. Well, I got to do all of those things. All of those things happened as a result of me getting better and better and better at the job. I was passionate about improving at a craft, especially something that's hard. Playing quarterback, very hard. Selling over the phone to people who are not expecting your call, very hard. But a very important skill to develop. And I think you can be passionate about all of those elements, even if you're not passionate about the company, which I became very passionate about the company. I started loving so many people that worked there that helped me, or passionate about the product you sell. Now, I believed in it. I thought it was helpful. Am I passionate about it? Probably never. But I was passionate about so many different elements of it. So if that's the advice given to young people, like find your passion, you'll never work a day in your life. Like that's just not true. Like I am living out, doing the stuff that I want to do. I work really hard 7 days a week. Saturday and Sunday, there are certainly parts of those days that I'm working. There are no real days off. Now, that's by choice because I love the work. But when somebody that quote of like find what you're passionate about and you never work a day in your life is just so wrong. It's the opposite of that. Like the work, if you want to be good at it at least, is really hard. It almost never ends. But it feels, I think, fulfilling because you are doing something that you've developed a passion for. So I think the skill and the development comes first, the passion comes second. But you gotta go through that hard part. And the hard part is actually, I think, part of what makes it so fulfilling, which makes it like think about any of the greatest moments of your life, like the greatest stuff. Let's say a mom had a child. Well, what was it like the 9 months before they had that child, right? It's really hard, harder than anything I've ever done in my life. I know that. Most of the greatest things that have ever happened in anyone's life have been preceded by something really hard. When we won a lot of football games, it was preceded by an amazing amount of hard practice, lifting weights, running our conditioning test, watching film, preparing, all that stuff. When we lost, it was usually we didn't work as hard. And so to me, it's like, that part of it's really fulfilling when it comes to work. Like it's supposed to be hard. The hard is actually what makes it good. And I hope that people could understand that, especially those who just expect it to not be hard. But I think young people get a bad rap. I think people talk about this next generation as like they're not willing to work or they just want to do what they're passionate about and not work hard. In my experience, they're further ahead than I was at that age. So I think I am not speaking to at least the ones I've met. I think we're in good shape in that regard. Yeah. But I just think it's important to understand kind of the order of things, the process that we go through in order to find that passion.
Well, and don't you think? I think they're in the young people with whom I have any interaction, and they say, "Oh, I just hate what I'm doing right now. I just don't enjoy this. I want something better." And I said, "But think about where you are in this moment. You're there for a reason. Like Sarah said at the very beginning, there are no accidents. So what are you supposed to glean from this experience? And how can you find that some glimmer of excitement or passion, even though you know it's not something you're going to be doing the rest of your life, you can take something very powerful away from this."
I had a great leadership role, and I had a boss that I really liked that made the call to hire me.
That'd be a non-boss hole.
Right.
Yeah, but they fired him. So they fired him shortly after that.
Of course they did.
Yes.
Jeez.
So they hired somebody who was the opposite of him. And I remember at this time, and I did my best to kind of get along and do whatever you got to do, right, when you have a job like that. And after a while, I realized, like, oh, God, like we're just not aligned values. There's whatever, host of things without getting into too specifics. This is a real life thing. I remember calling my dad, though. I complained a lot. I said, this guy's terrible, and here's this, and ethical, and trust, and whatever, all the things. I complained to my wife a lot. I remember my dad finally called me back after one of these days, and my dad's the greatest, and he just said, "Hey, man, you're going to be able to draw so much from this experience. Don't waste the opportunity you have right now."
Amen.
Don't waste it. And right now, you're wasting it because all you do is complain. And it's probably messing up like your relationship, especially with the most important one, your wife, because if you just complain all the time, who wants to hang out with somebody like that? I'm like, yeah, man, he's so right. Wow. So I actually kind of shifted my perspective. Now, I knew I wasn't going to be in that job forever because I wasn't going to work for somebody like that for a long time. but I changed kind of how I viewed it. Instead of saying, this sucks, I hate it, this guy's horrible, instead saying, let's try to learn something every week from this guy, even and mostly if it's what not to do. And, you know, I was told by Liz Weissman and Susan Cain, actually both said this in different ways. Sometimes getting curious is better than being judgmental, even if the person seems to be unethical and lies or whatever. I remember Liz said, why don't you just ask yourself, I wonder why they're that way. I wonder why they do the things that they do. Maybe we can be less judgmental and more curious, you know, and that's probably a good idea. And so I started having those thoughts. I started documenting some key learnings. I started writing down things not to do. I tried to be less harsh, not always successful at that. So I think, like, even if you find yourself in a bad situation, realize it's not going to be forever. Right. What can I learn from this? What should I, you know, maybe there is every once in a while something to do well that you can take. And then certainly what are the things that they don't do well that we should cross off our list of make sure that we don't do those things.
That's such a great segue to a wrap up, because I was writing down key takeaways. And that goes back to the very first one of our recording today. You basically said, give leaders the benefit of the doubt. You maybe didn't say those words, Ryan, but what you did say is it's harder than it looks. And if we can get curious and reduce some of that judgment and try to be part and parcel of a relationship and a solution, we're going to have a different outcome. But especially we're going to feel better and be better inside. So I think that, you know, it's harder than it looks. Number two, do the work, even if you don't want to. Like, be consistent, because consistency develops trust, and trust is so integral to collaboration and everything else. And, you know, it requires that we demand a bit of ourselves, and we can do hard things. The other one, number three, know and live your values. So it's necessary to do the work to understand and define those values. And it might be a long time, might not be a long time, but then find ways to live into that. This actually might have been up there, number 1, too, but we'll call it number 4, self-awareness. You know, self-awareness is essential, and you have to have people around you who can shine a light and work with you and mentor and coach you. That's part of the reason why you developed the leadership circles with your organization. It's a service where you create collaboration and relationships that do just that for these individual leaders to continue to learn and grow. And I think, well, there's probably 4 or 5 other ones, but those are the ones that rose to the top for me. Good stuff. Powerful stuff. What's next for you, Ryan? What's coming up next?
I really am a heads down kind of do the work thing. So one of my weakness areas is not having a long-term strategic plan. It's worked well, but maybe that'll change. So I'm really just focused on recording my podcast every week, shipping it out. Well, you know, I have a lot of them done in advance to get make sure I stay consistent. So I'm gonna do that. I'll always be writing, because I think writing is the greatest way to create clarity of thought. My leadership circles has been a really cool element of the work. It's some of the most fulfilling things I do by curating people who are raising their hands saying they want more, they want to be surrounded by others. So I'm going to continue working hard at that. We just launched a new group, and I'm launching another one in a couple of weeks. So that's a big part of my work. And then I'm on the road speaking about 25 to 30 times a year. Try to be picky about those moments to not have too many plane flights. But I do still love kind of the rush and the opportunity to get up on stage and to impact people in a positive way. Hopefully that they leave my sessions in a better position than when I got there. So that's what I'm gonna keep doing, and I find it to be super fulfilling, and I feel very grateful. And the reward for me is just I get to keep doing it. So that's really why I try to work hard at it and do a good job to make sure it's useful for other people.
Well, that's awesome, and I would encourage everybody, make sure you check the show notes, because Ryan, all of these different references, the books, your LinkedIn connection, we'll make sure that they're in there so people can have easy access. I'm sorry, those people in the entire world that do not know of you yet, and there are very few of them, they'll have access to you.
Nice. Hey, are you still accepting applications for your upcoming leadership circle?
We leave applications open. My groups are full right now. We're over capacity, but including Matthew's one, who's going to do one for me too for the first time. It's the first time I'm not leading it, so it's actually I'm excited about that addition we've made. But we always accept them. I still have the conversations, but we're full for the beginning of 2023.
Good. All right. Well, we'll make sure we include a link to Mindful Mondays where people can keep updated
Great.
about that.
Thank you.
And love to hear that you're scaling your services, inviting others in. That's awesome. Ryan, thank you for everything today. You've been a great guest. We wish you the best of luck and hope to talk to you again in the future.
Thank you, Sarah. Thank you, John. I appreciate it. Thanks for being so prepared.
You bet. We'll see you next time on the Boss Hole Chronicles.
We'd like to thank our guest today on the Boss Hole Chronicles. And if you have a Boss Hole Chronicles story of your own, please email us at mystory@thebossholechronicles.com. Once again, mystory@thebossholechronicles.com. We'll see you again soon.